My guest this afternoon is Andrew Sykes. He's a secondary school teacher who last year decided to use his summer holiday to cycle from Reading to southern Italy, all on his bike. And he's now turned his adventure into a book. Andrew, thanks for coming to see us this afternoon.
Thank you.
You've only had to make it from Henley to Caversham, so it's not quite such a trek.
Well, I actually live in Reading, so I work in Henley, but I live in the centre of Reading, so it's not very far at all.
And you are currently on your summer holidays because you teach at what school in Henley?
I teach at Gillett School in Henley.
So you can say hello to all of your pupils.
Yeah, hello to everybody. Hopefully some of them are listening.
They're probably thinking, I don't want to think about school. I don't want to think, I know I used to be. So we've got loads to cover with you. So really, biking, cycling, has it always been a passion? Has it always been something you wanted to do more of? Because it's quite a long way you decided to cycle.
It is. I've always been a cyclist. I can't remember when I never had a bike. And although I've had cars in my early 30s, it was never something that I really got into. And I'd been commuting from Reading to Henley for the past 5 years, more or less. And the idea of cycling to Italy first came to me. I think we're very lucky as teachers to have 6 weeks of holiday.
You get teased about it enough, though, if you're a teacher.
We do, but we're very, very lucky. And I would hate to go back to a job where I had to look forward 6 months until my next holiday. So it's great having that 6, 7, 8 week period of work, and at the end of it having a holiday. And obviously the 6 weeks holiday in the summer is just the biggest bonus going. And in 2008, when I'd planned to do nothing, and for no good reason. I don't know why I didn't do anything. And I was watching the Olympics. It was in Beijing, and I was watching the women's cycle race, and it was all set at the Beijing Wall. Sorry, the Great Wall of China. And the weather was awful. It was throwing it down. But it was the day when Nicole Cook actually won the gold medal, and I was sat on my sofa thinking, I really should be out there doing something a bit more adventurous than simply sitting on my sofa watching other people have fun in far off places. So it was then when I just sat on my sofa and I thought, well, actually, what could I do? And I was a cyclist. I'd never done anything remotely exciting as a cyclist, but I was certainly a cyclist. And I thought, well, actually, why don't I try and cycle somewhere interesting? And I thought about it in my brain. I thought, well, John O'Groats Land's End, but it didn't seem kind of exotic enough. I wanted to go somewhere where it was at least a little bit foreign. I thought about who I knew in and around Europe, and I know I have good friends who live in the south of Italy now. And I thought, well, why don't I think about trying to cycle down to the southeast of Italy, down to Puglia, which is eventually 2 years later what I did. So that's the reason why I did it.
I mean, for lots of people, they have an idea and they think, oh, wouldn't it be great if I don't know, got a camper van and filled it with marshmallows and, but what was the journey from, this is a great idea, to actually making it happen? There's quite a lot of preparation that needs to go into making it actually...
True, although... probably less than you think. I would imagine. After having come up with the original idea in August 2008, it actually gave me something to do for a few weeks. I thought about it, I planned it, or I started beginning to look into what the options were for anybody who wanted to cycle all that distance.
And there are some kind of, I don't quite understand it, but some European cycle routes.
Yes, there's a network called the Eurovelo route, or the Eurovelo routes, which was they've been set up by the European Cyclist Federation. And there are 15. I think they've just actually increased them. There are now 18, but there were 15 at the time. And these things crisscross Europe. And when I found these things, I thought, brilliant. Somebody's done all the hard work for me. All I need to do is get hold of the manual, presumably one existed, and then follow the instructions as to how to get from London to Brindisi, which is about 50 kilometres from where my friends were living in, or do live in southern Italy. And I really did think, when I found that, excellent, the work's been done. All I had to do now was wait a matter of 2 years to do it. But when I looked into it, actually, nobody seemed to have done. They'd done portions of the trip. People had cycled what's known as the Via Francigena, which is the old pilgrimage route from Canterbury, to Rome. But nobody seemed to have done anything in terms of documenting a journey from London all the way down to Brindisi, which are the two ends of the Eurovelo route. Even the European Cyclist Federation, I approached them, but they really, in effect, said good luck. But they weren't able to provide me with anything apart from, there is a description, and it says go from here to here, and a lot of the route does piggyback upon other regional routes. For example, a good example is in Switzerland, where when you arrive in Basel, in the north of Switzerland, there is a route number 3, which takes you all the way to Como, more or less, on the just over the Italian border. So it was a case of then, over the following 2 years, of piecing together all these little bits and pieces to have one coherent route. But I have to say, on the day that I set off, I still wasn't 100% certain as to where I would be staying in each night. I knew for the first, I think, 4 nights where I would be.
But that was it.
But the 5th night, I was still scratching my head, and I had a notebook, and when it came to stage 5, it was kind of a big question mark.
So you were just saying before we had a little bit of bread, you were setting off. Some of it was planned, some of it really you didn't quite know how it was going to go. What were your highlights and lows, I guess, of the trip? I mean, you start off, and what was the first part where you thought, this is great, I'm loving this?
Well, the highlights were through the website. I'd set the website up quite early, mainly to record my own thoughts, and I never made a big thing about publicising it.
It was more for you, almost.
It was. I didn't really tell anybody about it. I think mainly because I wasn't confident way back in summer 2008 that actually I would ever get anywhere near setting off for Brindisi. So the website was initially just for me to keep my ideas together. But gradually people started to find out what I was doing. People I'd never met, quite a few people who were on the route of the Eurovelo 5. So one of the nicest things was to then set off and actually meet these people and stay with them in some cases as I travelled south. So I for example,
did you have a clever phone? Is that how you were doing it?
The blogging was just in through an iPhone, but this is prior to me actually setting off.
Yeah.
I'd made these contacts, and I was invited to stay with people, Ian and Carly in Deal in Kent, and then when I got to France in Boulogne, I stayed with a chap called Alain, and then likewise in Lille with somebody else, Anaïs, and then when I got to Italy, Simone in Pavia. And
you didn't know any of these people before?
None of these people I knew before. I also met a few friends along the way. I met a friend in London and a German friend who came over to Stuttgart, to Strasbourg. But one of the nicest things was just to meet these people and to experience life in their city, in their town, as they would as locals, rather than as a visiting cyclist who simply would see it from a tourism perspective.
And sort of cycle through and then be gone.
Exactly, yes.
So,
yes.
Some of there's more than we can cover, even in an hour, but some of your highlights you've said, you found a gorgeous campsite in the East End of London. Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I was amazed. I'd met my friend Paul in central London. We'd wandered across central London, and he'd said goodbye, and he'd gone back home. And I was left to find the campsite. It's a place called Abbey Wood, which is not very far from Belmarsh Prison.
Right.
I'd cycled past
Picturesque.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd seen a sign for Belmarsh Prison, thinking, am I really in the right place here? But I could see eventually in the distance on the hill a wood, and usually British campsites have got the image of kind of carry-on camping, and their image is not very good. Well, certainly the campsite in Abbey Wood was fantastic. It wouldn't have been out of place if you found it in the Dordogne or some other top camping place in France. Gorgeous site, and I think that was important because it set my mind at ease for the rest of the trip. Having completed one full day where I'd cycled, I'd managed to find somewhere which I hadn't reserved in advance, I'd managed to find somewhere to sleep for the night, and I'd kind of done one adventure.
So almost like a series of little mini, every day was a bit of an adventure.
Absolutely, absolutely. It wasn't one 35-day adventure, it was 30 days 30 days cycling, 5 rest days, 30 adventures, one after another, because I never knew where I would be staying.
Because I guess you didn't know exactly how far you'd get to cycle, because you could have had, and we'll come to this later, mechanical problems with the bike.
Yeah.
You might have just been a bit, tired one day and not got quite as far as you thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd researched where I could stay. I'd researched where there were campsites, but that didn't always work. For example, I arrived in a place in Italy on one of the days when my spoke had broken, thinking, at least I've arrived in the place where I can sleep.
Yeah.
Only to realise that actually the campsite on the phone app that I had didn't exist. And I still had to cycle another 20 kilometres with a broken spoke to actually find somewhere where I could actually sleep. So, but that kind of thing, yes, it's a negative thing, but it did make the whole thing more enjoyable.
I bet it did.
Because you knew that all those little things were just, quite frankly, making it a more...
Tell me about ballroom dancing. Because I bet that was glamorous in Lycra.
Well, that was on the third day. My first night in France was in just outside Boulogne-sur-Mer, and Boulogne is a place I know very, very well because I take kids there every year, and I'd only been there, I think, the week prior to me arriving on the cycle.
So you were like on the home straight, know this.
Yes, and so I met Alain, the chap who was going to be putting me up for the evening. We cycled off to his house in the French countryside. Great little place. He had 2 donkeys, 2 massive dogs.
Cheese, wine.
It was the French life completely.
That's what I was thinking.
Completely. And then he said, "Right, we're going ballroom dancing."
Oh.
And I kind of. Okay, fair enough. I didn't want to kind of give him the impression that clearly I wasn't. It was something that he'd planned with his friends, so we went off in his car and we ended up in this hall, just near his house, and ballroom dancing ensued, and I ended up doing the tango with this very nice French woman. But I don't know. I don't. Still to this day, I'm not exactly sure what they thought of me.
Or who you were, or why you were there,
exactly,
crashing their ballroom.
Because Alain never said to them, "This is." I think he might have said that he's travelling through Boulogne, but he never made clear that I was a cyclist rather than some expert ballroom dancer who'd happened to come over from England. So goodness knows what they thought about me.
And you probably hadn't packed a DJ for the occasion.
No, I hadn't. I was still in my shorts, I'm afraid. Although not my Lycra ones.
Many more stories to come from Alan. We're going to find out. Alan, I've just made you French then. Sorry, Andrew. We're going to be finding out how he turned this into a book. He teaches in Henley, but last year decided to cycle for some mad reason from Reading to southern Italy on a route that you don't think anybody has done the whole way through, is what you were saying earlier, Andrew. You think you might be the only person who's done it really from start to finish.
Oh, absolutely. I know. I think lots of people will have done it.
But there's no evidence. But you couldn't get hold of them.
But I couldn't find anything on the internet or anything to read which documented how they'd done it, where they'd stopped, the routes that they'd taken. I'm sure many people have. Indeed, the pilgrimage route from Canterbury to Rome is a very, very well-trodden path, although that was slightly to the west of the route that I took because the pilgrimage route is a very, very direct route that goes through the east of France. So,
we are hearing all about your journey. What is your bike called?
The children at school think I'm completely crazy because they know that my bike is called Reggie.
Yeah.
Which, as you can imagine, causes much amusement. But he is called Reggie. The reason why I gave him a name was because when I was updating the blog.
Was this before you set off? Or
this was before I set off, and I just read a book by a chap called Peter Moore called Vroom with a View, where he went round Italy on a Vespa, and he gave a name to his Vespa.
Yeah.
And it was very easy for him to refer to his Vespa in human terms because he'd given his Vespa a name. So by doing the same thing for my bike, Reggie Ridgeback, which was the brand that he was, it made it very, very easy on the blog, and then subsequently when I was writing the book, to actually bring in a lot more descriptive language to actually talk to him. Sorry, no, I didn't talk to him. Not that crazy.
Are you sure?
Talk about him. I might have had the occasional word with him, but not very often.
So we left you ballroom dancing in Boulogne. You you would have had, you know, the most amazing highs and a few lows. And I suppose you've got Reggie. You're travelling with him a long, long way. How many miles was it? Do you know?
It was 3,300 kilometres in the
Wow.
end, so about just over 2,100, 200 miles.
So you did have a few mechanical problems. Poor Reg. He needed to go see the doctor a few times.
He did. He was fine up until the point where we got over the Alps, and it was a strange day because I'd cycled from Lucerne. The first half of the trip was extremely wet, and I think the lowest point was probably in Lucerne, where it was throwing it down. The campsite was like a paddy field, and I continued up into the mountains. But when I got to a place called Andermatt, which is very high up in the Alps, the weather suddenly started to improve. And the following day, when I went through the St. Gothard Pass, it was the most fantastic day in terms of the weather, which was just what I wanted, because I really wanted to avoid, if I possibly could, getting to the top of the pass and then not being able to see anywhere, either where I'd come from or where I was going on the other side.
You'd be pretty gutted. I mean, if you go on the London Eye, you're a bit sad if it's a cloudy day. I mean, when you've cycled that far.
Absolutely. And after so many days of consecutive bad weather, very, very bad rain, really, from the point of arriving in France until the point of arriving in Andermatt, the weather was pretty awful. The people in Switzerland had said it was the worst summer that they could remember on record. But this day, when I went up to the highest point of the St. Gothard Pass, it was beautiful weather. So it was a real high point, especially in view of the fact that the weather had been so bad. I spent about half an hour at the top. Fantastic place if you could get rid of all the other tourists, but it was a bit of a tourist trap, and quite a comical experience going up to the top and seeing what was up there. But I then started to descend down the other side. Now, I met a chap at the campsite in Andermatt called Klaus, who's a German chap. He was camping. He'd been up before, and he said, whatever you do, when you get to the top, don't go down the cobbled road. And I got to the top, and there were two roads. There was the old cobble road, and there was the new it wasn't a motorway, but the new road that you could go down quite quickly on, but it was a high-quality road. I got over the top of the mountain, through the pass, and I looked down the valley, and all you could see, you could see on the right your modern road, which looked very bland and boring, but then on the left-hand side, you could see the twisting turns of the old cobbled road, and I thought, sorry, Klaus, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to miss the opportunity of going down this cobbled road, because it just looks such a fantastic thing. So I set off, and within probably 20 minutes, I heard this horrible, horrible crack. Initially, I ignored it, but it was clear that something had gone wrong with the bike, because the back wheel was wobbling horribly. I got off and realised that I'd broken a spoke, and the back wheel was now wobbling to a degree that you really didn't want to see.
So you've just come down off the Alps.
Yeah.
So you're now into Italy?
No, I'm not into Italy, because
quite.
the Ticino, which is the southern part of Switzerland, is an Italian-speaking area. But once you go over the Alps, you're still I was still in the for 2 days when I stayed in Bellinzona. So I was still in Switzerland. The nearest place was a town called Ero, which was a very nice town if you've got a caravan and a car, but not great when you've got a broken bike, because it was full of restaurants, bars and what have you. And I asked a chap, I speak kind of functional Italian, so I managed to say, is there a bike shop, or can I have my bike anywhere? And he just shrugged his shoulder, and he just pointed at all the bars and the restaurants. And So I was expecting to have to go to a larger town, perhaps even Milan, on the train to actually find somewhere to mend the bike. And it was when I got to the train station, I just noticed one sign, it said bike. And I wandered over, and it was deserted. I pushed open the door, and to my left, I could see what looked, it must have been at least 200 brand new yellow bikes that were for hire from the Swiss train company. And on my right was a fully equipped bike shop.
No way.
Problem is, it was deserted. I wandered back out, and then suddenly a guy appeared. We agreed to speak in French to each other, because he didn't speak English and I didn't speak German or good enough Italian. And we agreed a price, and he mended it, and he stood there for half an hour, and my bike was mended, and it was a miracle. Whoever was looking down upon me, they certainly blessed me that day, because to have found somewhere to repair the bike in those circumstances was nothing short of a miracle.
Pretty amazing. So, fast forwarding to when you arrive at your mate's house, how did that feel to have actually completed it, gone all that way, all the way from Reading, and you'd arrived where you were hoping to arrive?
Well, it felt fantastic, obviously, and it was great to see Basil. Basil, he was the last person I'd seen when I left Reading. I'd waved him off, and he was still finishing school. He's a languages teacher as well, or he was. He's now living in the south of Italy with Liz, his wife. He was the last person I saw, so obviously seeing them in the south of Italy was fantastic. However, as one of the reviewers said for the book, 1%, the destination is but 1% of the adventure. And looking back, it was the meeting the people, it was visiting the places, finding out about the various places that I was visiting, the experiences of just all those little adventures which made it the trip it was. So the destination was fantastic.
Yeah.
But the trip itself was the real thing.
And we're going to be hearing in just a second about how you turned it into a book, and how, if you're interested, how you can actually get your stuff online yourself. Andrew is now an author and looking for someone to publish his book, but you can download it. Details after Queen. Queen and Don't Stop Me Now here on BBC Radio Box. I think that was quite apt for you, Andrew. I used to imagine you pedalling along to that. My guest in the studio is Henley teacher Andrew Sykes, who last year cycled from Reading to southern Italy. He is now the author of Good Vibrations, Crossing Europe on a Bike called Reggie. So when did you get the idea to turn the blog and the website into a book?
Well, when I came back I got back to Britain, and a few people who had been following the blog, which people can still visit. You can still visit it if you type in Eurovelo 5 and my name. You'll kind of come up with the website. I still update it. It's more of a general cycling blog now than it is necessarily just about that one thing. But a couple of people, for example, an ex-colleague, Sally, said to me, "Well, why don't you write a book?" And I thought, no, I can't write. I really don't have the time to write a book. And I let it lay over the winter, and then I came back to it. Somebody made exactly the same comment. I can't remember who it was, at Easter, and I had a little bit of time on my hand. I was back off work, obviously, for the Easter holidays, and I started to write the book, and I really enjoyed it. And it took me from Easter of this year until probably about 3 weeks ago. Interesting process. It wasn't just simply a case of taking what I'd written from the blog and putting it in a book. Far from it. And I would imagine anybody who did follow the blog wouldn't recognise a lot of the actual words that I used, because I rewrote it. It was good aide-memoire, and there were only very, very short chunks which I actually quoted from directly. And again, just like the journey itself, I don't think I ever really believed I would get to the point where I'd written 110,000 words and had a book. But I did, and this is about a month ago, and I reread it and I checked it very forensically to the extent that I could, and I thought, well, what can I...
Because you are a teacher, so you know.
Absolutely.
You should know where your apostrophe is
going. I got my red pen out, and I made all my errors, corrected all my errors, and I thought, well, what can I do with it now? And obviously the option was, yes, try and get it published. A bit of a daunting thought. I wanted to also do it quite quickly, a bit impatient, and I'd recently read that Amazon now sell more electronic books than they do hard copies, so I looked into putting it on Kindle, which is what I've done, and
it's really easy.
It is. It's very easy. I uploaded it. Obviously, you've got to go through a certain formality, but it was relatively straightforward to upload it. It is now on there. When I checked earlier today, it was number 10, I think it was number 10 in the list of cycling books being sold.
That's brilliant.
And you can go onto Kindle, onto Amazon on Kindle, and you can search for the book. You can find it. You can download it, and
it doesn't have to be on one of those devices. It can be on other tablet devices.
Absolutely, you can download it to your PC, to your phone if it's got a decent sized screen. You don't actually need a Kindle reader.
So what you need now is someone listening, nice fat publisher, to give you a big fat check, so you can do another adventure, so you can write another book, and then on it goes.
Absolutely. I mean, I can see the next book already. It will probably be called something like More Vibrations, but there is a route that goes from Athens in the east of Europe all the way to Cadiz. That's Eurovelo 8. So if anybody's out there who wants to offer me lots of money to do that, then by all means, I'm your man.
Andrew, it's been fantastic having you on the show. I'm sure we'll hear from you again. And if you do get that, fat publishing check, because you're talking to me, do let me know.
Doctor Who returns.